why do you think it's so important to tell the stories that you're telling today?
Oh, I mean, I think, one of the things that I try to do in my work is I try to answer the question, how did we get here? Right. I'm always inspired by the Deborah Cox song where she says, how did we get here? Nobody's supposed to be here. And so many of the challenges that we face today are really rooted in the past, the way the country began, right? This country began with moving out indigenous people and grinding down the lives of Black folks through it began. We can't sort of separate the founding with these sort of noble stories of innovation and the separation of powers from the way in which people were made to suffer in the service of these principles that they couldn't participate in. So I tell the stories I tell to try to get closer to an honest story of who we are so that we can be really earnest and sincere about becoming better.
In this time right now, I mean, it takes a lot of courage to still tell stories about race and be faced with so much backlash. What keeps you
Yeah.
going?
Gosh, I mean, honestly, what keeps me going most of all is the ancestors, and most importantly, my grandmother, who I always say was the smartest person I ever knew and did not finish high school and figured out how to impart courage and dignity to her children while raising them in Jim Crow Alabama, right? And so I'm always saying, well, if she could do what she was able to do in her time, then I can actually fulfill that legacy in the present. So yeah, there is a lot of backlash, but there are also people who are hungry to know, right? And I try to focus on, like when I get trolls, I don't engage them, just disengage, block, right? Unless they're threatening, in which case I do report them, right? But more often, I focus on those of us who want everybody to be able to live a decent, humane life, right? And who believe in principles like justice and fairness and love. And that, so you try to focus on what matters and understand that there are many, many people who suffered much worse in previous generations and presently, right? So that's what keeps me going.
What does America at its best look like to you? How does it function?
Oh, I mean, you know, for me, America at its best is actually found in the Black South. And what I mean is that from the condition of complete domination, degradation, violence, to imagine freedom, to imagine beauty, to believe in love is one of the most remarkable human legacies on the planet. And so I'm very much American. I can trace my family back to, before the nation was a nation, 1769. And that's my tradition. And I think we would be a much better country if all of us embrace that tradition of actually believing in something greater, and actually the real principles, the real sort of imagination of the principles that we claim to hold. So that for me is America at its best. And you see it everywhere. There are freedom dreams all over the place. Just because those who are in power don't always fulfill those freedom dreams or facilitate them doesn't mean they're not there. So I feel like that's my legacy, what it means to be American for me.
We're expecting you in Mississippi sometime soon, right?
Yes, I will be there twice. In I think February 23rd and March 30th. So I'm so excited. I always say, it's the only place in the world that if I was dropped in the state of Mississippi, I wouldn't be able to know that it wasn't Alabama. And there's no place else like that for me. And so it holds a dear space in my heart, even though I have a little back and forth with my Mississippian friends like Eddie Glaude and Kiese Lehman, and they claim superiority. That's okay. But I love it. So I'm looking forward to it.